Good morning. Here comes that sun. I'm gonna go with chapter 25, Bonnie and Clyde. All right. When I look back, I see my life like a deck of cards I'm flipping through. I catch a glance now and then, a scene of something that flew by, but it happened so quickly. I was racing so fast it looks like a big blur. Breaking down that blur isn't easy. I think I liked the blur. Rejecting responsibility, living according to the way the winds were blowing. I was a people person. I didn't live like a star. Didn't care about any of that star shit. Being a street junkie meant as much to me as being a singer. I'm not saying that to boast or shock, just to be honest. That is who I was. The people I hung around were junkies and dealers. They accepted me, and I accepted them. I was one of them. I didn't feel judged, and I sure as hell didn't do any judging. I was interested in scoring. Scoring is always the problem. The challenge, the danger, the reason for getting out of bed in the morning, the motivation for living. Scoring becomes a full-time obsession. Scoring got rough for me and Mills, and when things got bumpy, we got into trouble. I didn't think I'd ever turn into a criminal, but I did. We were crazy. When we were low on dope, we'd start strong-arming folks, even holding them up. Usually they were people we knew. Word got around. Artists and Etta are losing it, folks started saying. They're coming around here with a gun, looking for drugs and money. We stuck up friends. We ran scams. I might find someone who wanted to cop but didn't have a connection, so I would convince him to give me bread to score for him. If he was leery, I'd invite him along with me and Mills to watch the buy go down. We'd pull up to a house across from Jack in the Box on Slauson and 2nd Avenue. The guy would give me $1,500 to buy a blow. Be right back, I'd tell him. I'd take his money and run. He'd be waiting in the car with Artis for 5, 10, 15 minutes. After a half hour, Artis would say, "Look, something went wrong. You better get out." Scared and confused, the guy protested. If he protested for too long, Mills would throw his ass out of the car before picking me up around the corner. When those scams stopped working, I went back to writing bad checks. Even worse, I got involved in a check cashing ring run by a guy who had women working in the office of a big agricultural supply firm. The ladies would tear out a half dozen blank checks on the company name. I'd fill them out, usually typing in my name, for anywhere from $2,000 to $10,000. Then I'd go to the Security Pacific Bank on Washington Boulevard, where the manager, a pudgy Jewish guy with a sweet disposition, was a fan of mine. I'd run down my rap about how this agricultural organization was backing my shows. He believed me. He saw me as a famous pie-faced singer, incapable of lying. For a while, it worked. Then the man running the ring got greedy. He wanted half of everything we cashed. Artis got pissed. He said he'd rather beat up the guy than give in to his demands. I said it wasn't worth it. We'd done so much raunchy shit at this point, people were coming at us from all sides. Let's just cash this last check for $10,000, I said, and split. Around the same time, Sly Stone had a bunch of hot cars at his disposal. They weren't stolen by him, but by some of his hanger-ons. Sly might give these people some money and hit them to a place to hide the cars. If you want a new El Dorado, he told me, some cat just stole one out of a showroom down in Long Beach, but you're gonna have to get registration and tags. I took him up on the offer. And just like that, me and Artis had a new Cadillac for free. We had wheels and the prospect of work in New York City. Marv Schlachter, who was running Chess Records out of Manhattan, said he'd give me a desk job and locate a good kindergarten for Danto. He also said he'd find work for Artis and put me in a methadone program. I agreed, but in my heart I was really thinking of the cheap price of heroin in Harlem, and how me and Mills could be New York City junkies. There's one of the Eagles. With all that in mind, Artis drove me over to Security Pacific Bank to cash this last check. He waited outside with the motor running while I went in, looking for my man, the friendly manager who was always eager to talk about my music. Walking through the bank lobby, though, something felt weird. My antenna shot up. The manager was sitting in his office. The door was open, and when he spotted me, I could see he forced a smile. His friendliness was fake. In his office, we were two men. One guy was holding a briefcase. "Hi, Etta," the manager said. "Come on in." "Oh, hi, how are you?" I answered. But before I got any closer, I felt panic heating up my brain. I felt like I was walking into a trap. "Be right back," I told the manager before spinning around and heading out the door. In the back of my head, I could see those two guys coming after me, so I started to run. Artis was behind the wheel of the caddy waiting at the curb. "Step on it," I said, and I slid into the front seat. Tires screeching, we peeled off. When I turned around, I saw those guys outside the bank, huffing and puffing, pissed that I had gotten away. We ran home, grabbed Danto, packed up, and headed out. No way could we stay in LA. We had enough dope to last us until Texas. Texas, though, meant trouble. In Texas, we had a hard time scoring. We were only able to supply ourselves day by day. Our nerves were shattered. I was strung out. Artis was tired of running up and down the back alleys looking for dope. It was a desperate situation. By the time we pulled into San Antonio, our emotions were stretched to the limit. We were living in the Mexican side of a town in a Holiday Inn, where we were ordering room service and building up our bill, but not paying the rent. We also had a room back in the Black Hood, a hideaway, where we were copying, cutting, and shooting dope. The hideaway was in a boarding house owned by a wonderful man named Henderson Glass. Every day was a hassle. Locating a righteous dealer was no easy task. On one occasion, inspecting what he thought was inferior stuff, Artis let loose and cussed out the dealer, something awful. I had a bad feeling about the encounter. The guy would go snitch on us. I said to Mills, "Man, you cussed out the wrong cat." Next day, we were driving down an alley, looking for another connection, when two cop cars came flying in, blocking us on either side. Before I know it, they had their pistols pointing at us. The main man, a notorious Texas narcotics officer named Wild Bill, was screaming, "Freeze or we'll blow your brains out." Frantically, I tried to figure out how to hide the two little balloons of drugs I was holding tight in my hand. "Don't move," Wild Bill kept yelling, and there wasn't anything I could do but put my hands on the dashboard, the heroin hidden in my fists. He threw Mills out of the car and slammed him on the hood, kicking him in the back for good measure. Meanwhile, I was able to dump the dope on the ground, but it didn't take them long to find it. They whisked us over to our boarding house, which was filled with needles, works, weed, and some heroin. Just as we were being hauled away, Henderson Glass showed up and whispered, "Don't worry, Etta. I'll bail you out." Me and Mills were handcuffed and shoved together in the back seat as Wild Bill drove us to headquarters to be booked. "Look," I whispered to Artis, "Henderson's going to bail us out." "He will bail you out," said Mills. I ain't going nowhere but inside. I'm gonna tell him it's my stuff and you had nothing to do with it. I don't want you locked in some funky Texas jail. That's crazy, I argued. I got a better chance of getting out. Marvin Schlachter's gonna help me. The chess people got clout. I'll say the shit is mine. No, Artist insisted. It ain't gonna work that way. And it didn't. When we got to headquarters, the press was waiting, photographers and reporters shouting out questions. We didn't say nothing. When we got inside and were interrogated by the officials, Mills spoke up and said all the dope was his. Wouldn't let me say a word. I mean, he was adamant. Later he told me that was because he wanted to go to jail, that he was tired of our Bonnie and Clyde routine, tired of racing around, getting high and living life like a desperate fool. Jail looked good to him. Jail, he said, seemed like protection against an early death. Plus, he's the kind of guy who would simply stand up and take the rap for a woman or a friend. Artist Mills is something else. We got a lawyer who tried to see if Texas would send Artist back to California on the bad check charges, a lesser offense. But Texas wouldn't let him go. Wild Bill saw to it that Artist was put in the pen, where he stayed for nearly 10 years. Wild Bill blew the thing up, putting himself on TV and calling this the most important bust in years. He was one of those narcotics officers who'd rather break down a door than open it. He was all fire and fury. Fact is, when Dorothy flew down to San Antonio to help out me and Danto, she was happy to see Artist behind bars. Wild Bill and his boys came by our hotel to try to bust us again. After tearing up our room and not finding anything, he snatched the wig of Dorothy's head, thinking she might be hiding heroin under there. She wasn't. The strange thing is that Dorothy was attracted to Wild Bill. Years later, she corresponded with him and even made him a robe. That made me crazy. I couldn't stand the man. He said in some interview that he was proud of having positively influenced my career. That's bullshit. He didn't influence nothing. Although I have thought that if Artist hadn't gone to jail, we could have both OD'd in New York. But who knows? At this point, in 1972, fate was sending me and my man in different directions. He took the fall and never asked for thanks. Never asked for anything. In interrogating me and Mills, it came out that the car had come through Sly Stone. Back in LA, when the feds came to question Sly, he went ballistic. By freaking out, cussing and throwing things, he only hurt himself. The law came back with a warrant. All he had to say was that the car wasn't his, which it wasn't, and that'd be that. I'm not sure whether Sly was arrested, but then his legal hassles were worse than mine. But I do know he was plenty pissed at me. It was Uncle Frank who gave Dorothy the money to fly to Texas, and Uncle Frank who gave us the money to get from Texas to New York. Uncle Frank was still my guardian angel. Etta, he said, you better stop and sort things out. I tried, but I'm not sure I succeeded. Rather than me controlling circumstances, circumstances were controlling me. Texas let me go with the stipulation that I put myself in a methadone program the minute I got to New York. I had this idea that maybe I should take Dorothy with me. Maybe it was time to reconcile with my mother and have her help with Danto while I tried to straighten myself out. I was willing to try anything. That was chapter 25. Been reading to you. That was Bonnie and Clyde from the book Rage to Survive, Etta James and David Ritz. Chapter 26 will be Living for the City. I'm going to see if I can get another one for us today. Thank you for being with me. I appreciate you.